Welcome to the Endless Entrepreneurs YouTube channel. My name is Luke Henson. I am a eBay, Poshmark, and Mercari seller, primarily deal with apparel. I also invest in real estate and document that on this channel. I buy and hold long-term rentals, primarily single-family homes. And I also work full-time while doing those other two things in the corporate world. So if you're new to my channel, welcome. If you're returning and you've been following for a while, I appreciate that as always. Per the title of this video, I've been getting probably once a week, maybe twice a week, been seeing comments, getting direct messages. I can see it starting to trend is people complaining about slow sales, less traffic, just overall, whatever their business model has been is not working, or it's just not growing, but just a general complaint about that the traffic or their business is not thriving the way that they're used to it thriving, and not knowing what to do about it. And this video, I really want to accomplish two things. I want to touch on why that could be happening to people, and then two is overall, like, is eBay heading in the right direction, the wrong direction? I think it's really something that you always should be considering as you're selling and you're putting your business on a platform. You should be talking about the health of it. For those of you who know, I'm not a doom and gloom guy. I'm a pretty positive person. If you came here expecting a lot of doom and gloom, you're not going to get it. But you are going to get my honest opinion on what's happening with it. And I'm going to give some practical tips that can probably help jumpstart some of your sales on eBay. I'll preface that right now, having my best month ever on eBay right now. Granted, I've been growing a lot and scaling my business, so it's kind of hard to tell if that is a linear correlation or if it's just whatever. Rhonda said clickbait. Definitely not clickbait. This has been a real question, and I've seen this be a theme, a lot more of a big theme in the reseller community, specifically around eBay. A lot of buyers have a lot of sellers have shifted to these other platforms, thinking that eBay is just shrinking and dying and isn't the platform that's right for them any longer. I've seen a lot of people give up on it of late, probably this last quarter or so. I think a lot of people were expecting Q4 to be a booming quarter for them, especially apparel sellers, and it hasn't been as good as they thought. And that's been really the general tone I've gotten from a lot of people who message me, interact with the reseller community. So really just want to address this in hopes to help them, give them some practical tips to maybe help get over that hump. And really just kind of level set on where eBay is heading and kind of where I think they're heading, what the traffic looks like, etc. So enough rambling on that. I will do Q&A at the end as always. So if you're rewatching this later, the Q&A will be at the end. Hopefully it'll be beneficial to you as well to listen through. So I'm going to start on the back end of this title, right? I'm going to start with where, is eBay dying or something? So I'm going to say no. I think that it's growing. I think that eBay is still growing. I think that you can tell from their marketing efforts. If you watch TV frequently, I don't a ton, but even the limited times I do, especially during sporting events, I'm seeing a lot of eBay commercials. I'm getting a lot of eBay promoted items and listings in my Instagram feed, my Facebook feed. Those are the things that I pay attention to, and I'm trying to determine if like a platform I'm on or business is trending upwards or downwards, or if they at least put an effort into getting it out there. So from a visibility standpoint, they're definitely putting their foot on the gas on the exposure. I think they're embracing the social media side of how they can get out there and promote the site. I think they're trying to make it easier for sellers, but if my honest opinion is they just haven't got there yet. It's very interesting when you look at a site like Poshmark or Mercari, how easy it is to sell items, how easy and streamlined and simple it is to just list things and do business. eBay definitely hasn't got over that hurdle yet. It's still, in my opinion, a lot more complicated of a platform than the other two. When you're comparing like apparel, and I know a lot of people sell on eBay that don't do apparel, and like Mercari might be okay for that, but like Poshmark doesn't really do a lot of they don't do hard goods and things like that. It's more of a fashion site. So there are some tough comparisons there, as eBay is really one of the only places you can pretty much sell anything. So that is one advantage, eBay versus that. But I think in general, from an approach standpoint, they're still growing. I think traffic still grows there. I mean, it's nothing compared to Amazon. It's like, it's just a blip on the radar compared to Amazon. But I don't think that people who fulfill their own orders in their own business is really, it's the same marketplace, but it's not the same marketplace at the same time. So it's just a little different feel to it. But in general, I think that eBay traffic is trending up, which honestly leads back to my original point of this video is I'm seeing a lot of people complain about slow sales on eBay. And when you think about that, right, if I just made the statement that eBay sale or eBay traffic and visibility and effort is trending up, right? Why would your sales be trending down? And I think that's a really tough thing for people to swallow. And I think it's a really tough thing to swallow that it could be their fault and not eBay's fault. I think it's always very easy to throw the excuse of, well, eBay changed this or did that, instead of looking at why it's happening and adjusting to why it's happening. So before I started to scale this year, I ran into a similar situation where my sales were shrinking. It didn't matter what the effort I was doing, they were shrinking. Then I got to a point when I was scaling that my sales started to shrink a little bit. And I'm going to talk about a couple of those points and what I think happened and what I've done to correct them in hopes that it'll help you. Because while I don't consider myself the expert of all experts on eBay, I consider myself a successful seller. I'll cross over 100,000 probably in gross sales this year. It's looking like I'm right around the 100,000. Doing it on a semi-part-time basis. I work full time, so to me that's I think enough validity that I have a feel for the platform. So I think that I have enough that I can hopefully help and add some value to kind of steer those in the right direction. So let's talk about. I think it's really important to talk about why you could be struggling with eBay and why in general as a seller, I don't think that we're adapting to what's actually happening. I think this is really something that as sellers, we got so used to. I know I'm very guilty of it. I got so used to just listing and forgetting or listing in a certain method and, same like long tail price and hold and, kind of unique inventory, higher price inventory, single source stuff. And I got very used to that model, and I just kind of put my head down and was always just like source list, source list, source list. And yeah, absolutely, it's a foundation of selling on eBay. You have to have fresh listings coming in. You have to have new inventory coming in. You need to be like, I totally agree with that. However, what I am realizing is if you take a step back and look at the marketplace, the amount of information, look, right now we're on YouTube. I have 70 people watching live right now. We're talking about eBay as a platform. We're talking about selling there. There's every how-to video you could find on how to sell any type of item you want on eBay. Like that didn't exist 10 years ago, right? Like it wasn't as easy. It wasn't the barrier or the barrier to entry was much higher before. And so when you look back, I look now and I take a step back and I go, all right, what has changed in the landscape, right? More traffic, but sales decreasing for people. I think the biggest thing that's changed and people haven't adapted to is the sellers have gotten better, right? It has nothing to do with the buyers. It has nothing to do with the traffic. And someone just made a point about used clothing being saturated. I don't even think that it's that. Like, I think, yeah, you can make an argument. It's more saturated than it was for sure. But there's more people shopping for it than ever before. Buying used clothing online is becoming more acceptable than ever before. So I think that's definitely offset by that. And when someone's saying, of course it's saturated. Yeah, so, I mean, I will kind of respectfully disagree that I don't think it's oversaturated. I think that the buyers out there might not have grown as fast as the saturation of clothing. So you could talk about oversaturated a little bit there. But in general, I think the bigger thing is that the new sellers of used clothing, right? They've evolved and become way more competitive than you realize. And they're taking that traffic from some of the older sellers who have stuck to their old routines, stuck to their old way they list, their old presentation, their old brands that maybe have styled out. I think that as a reseller, when you've done it for a long time, you just get used to your routine and you don't really adjust as frequently as you should. And, one of the things that I really had to look critically at myself, and I've done a good job of fixing, in my opinion, over the last quarter or so, is these newer sellers that have come in later and absorbed all this information and all these videos and have jumped in, they're adapting their presentation to be cleaner and nicer than some of the sellers who've been doing it for a long time. They are adapted to the newer, hotter, trending items, right? They might be pricing a little more competitively or getting a better buying cost, or they just might be more knowledgeable about what to source, and so they're selling quicker and faster and turning over the inventory and reinvesting. I think in general, the biggest thing that I'm seeing is that the presentation is becoming a huge differentiator in the marketplace, especially in used clothing. Like, I don't sell as much used clothing anymore. I primarily sell new tag stuff, but for sure, without a doubt, the presentation of seller to seller in the varying degrees and quality is enormous. I mean, you look through stores and it's like, you clearly see the sellers separating themselves with the very clean photos, a very clean background, whether it's all white or something a little more trendy, but just it's clean. The colors pop. There's no distractions. I can see the color of the item clearly. I can see all the little pieces of that make the item unique. I'm not having to squint or zoom or try to figure out what I'm looking at. That first photo is hitting them straight in the face, and the buyer knows exactly right away that they want that. They're not wasting their time with all these other comparable listings, even if they're cheaper, right? Even if it might even be a little better quality, if they can't tell, they're just skipping ahead to these newer sellers. And I say newer, right? I mean, like someone who just started selling last year and a half, 2 years, people who really focus on the quality, they're taking what I would call market share away from older sellers, right? Sellers that, and I don't mean by age, I mean the length of time you've been selling, right? And refusing to adjust to that reality, I think is hurting so many people more than they think. Like, I really, truly believe that people are underestimating how much not adapting to that presentation style and to the grabbing the buyer's eye. The consumer has evolved so much with what they're looking for and what they grab, that you have to catch them with the presentation right away. And then quickly behind that's got to be the description. They got to get everything they need in the title, right? Because most people are not going to the description, right? They're not drilling into the listing very much. They're on first photo and title, and that's pretty much selling them on it. And they might look at the rest after, but if you haven't sold them already on photo and title, you're done. You're getting eaten up by competition. And someone just said in the chat, I check the sold listings versus the current listing, and the facts are facts, price matters. So price definitely matters. You can't, I mean, it'd be foolish to say that price doesn't matter, right? Like if I price 3 times someone, and I'm gonna have a hard time selling if 3 times the market. However, if something's 25 and 30, right? $25 and $30, but my presentation is 10 times what the $25 one is, and I'm listed at 30, I'm probably selling to that buyer before the $25 one, because to them it's a $5 paid in insurance of like, I know what this item is because I can see it clear. The presentation's better. The seller's probably more reputable. He took the time to present it this way. To them, that $5 is the cost of the purchase. And nowadays, honestly, guys, people are used to paying more. Like Amazon Prime, if there's one thing that Amazon and FBA and everything has really done well for the marketplace, they have conditioned buyers to be willing to pay more. That's the truth. They have conditioned the bargain out of people. I mean, you might, and I don't think people realize it that much, right? We have become infatuated with buying time. We've become infatuated with buying it quickly, and we're willing to pay more for both of those things, which is why FBA is just winning, right? Amazon's winning because they know that. People are willing to pay for time. eBay's trying to catch up with some of the things they're offering, the guaranteed delivery, all that. I mean, it's not going to catch up to it. But what you can take advantage of and think about as a seller on these platforms like eBay is that you can use presentation and quality and good titles and these things that separate you and get a higher dollar value than the next person, the person next to you who did not do a good job in presentation, did not do that. So that's for one. 2 is freshness of listings. This I've personally noticed over the last 4 months has been a huge difference in my business. For me, now that I've outsourced pretty much the whole listing process. So I mean, like drafting the listing, the title, setting the price, putting it on the platforms, eBay, Poshmark, Mercari, all that. I get to spend so much more of my time checking old inventory, updating titles, updating pricing of old inventory, stuff that when I was just a one-man show, I was not checking, right? I was listing and kind of forgetting it. I was probably only doing price adjustments once every month and a half, 2 months, not frequently enough at all. And now these last 3 or 4 months, I've spent a lot more time on that on all platforms, actually, adjusting pricing, adjusting titles, changing photo orders if I needed to, changing description if I needed to, just looking at what's in the market and adjusting the pricing based on what's in the market, right? If brands are trending out, I'm not just holding on to that at the old price anymore. I'm cutting that price down and trying to move it out. That shows an active store. And I'm telling you, like, no one can prove anything with the algorithm because the algorithm is proprietary. But what I can prove is that I've spent a disproportionate amount of time freshening up my listings, changing key things in them, reducing pricing to be competitive with old inventory and things they're trying out. And I've noticed a huge bump in sales in those listings. It's enough of a sample size for me now that I can say it definitely is making a huge impact. And most of us, if we are being honest, don't do that enough. Like, because by the time you get done sourcing, especially if you're a single seller, by the time you get done sourcing, like cleaning your items, setting them up, photos, listing them, the whole process, packing it, and then you got to ship whatever sold that day. The last thing you're thinking about in that is going back to all this old inventory and freshening up. People just don't have the time to grow their business in quantity and do that quality. Like, it's really, really hard to. So I'm gonna pause for a second. I want to address some things in the comments. Just want to make sure I'm checking this. Okay, I don't see any big things in here. I just want to make sure I was addressing them as they can. So someone also, this is a really good one. So someone switched from good till cancel to 30 days. Seems to help boost search rankings, in my opinion. So great point. And I mean, there's been kind of the argument for a long time that also delisting items, right, when they expire, selling similar instead of relisting gives them a new item ID and refreshes them in the search engine. I don't think there's any denying that could be true. The problem gets to, and Marco, I'm curious how many listings you have. Like, I have 3,300, almost 3,400 active listings. It's really hard for me to want to invest the time into that. If I thought it gave me a ridiculous boost, I think it would be worth it. I think if you're a smaller seller with 500, 600, 700 items, it's probably definitely worth it to do that. But as you scale, you'll find that becomes very challenging to keep up with that. But I don't disagree with that. It freshens it because it does, in fact, especially if you sell similar, it gives it a new item ID, which in any algorithm or database, that's going to be fresher to it. So we've talked about presentation. We've talked about the kind of the freshness of listings, updating them. And these aren't things that are revolutionary. You're not hearing. But if you're really being honest with yourself, you're not doing it as frequently as you should. Like, think about a storefront or any other business, like in retail. It's like they're constantly on a weekly basis cycling, moving things around, representing it, cutting prices, adjusting things to keep things moving. Like, we as e-commerce definitely get guilty of not doing that. And I know I was terrible at it. I'm getting better. I'm not even close to where I should be with it, but I'm getting better with that. And someone just said you can relist in bulk 500 at a time. Yeah, you absolutely can, but that's still 7 batches. And if you've tried to do 500 in the bulk relister, it takes for frickin' ever because the back end of eBay is slow as crap. So that is a complaint I do have about eBay. It is not fast to bulk relist 500 items, even with the bulk editor. So the third big thing that I want to talk about, and the other thing I've kind of recapped here is, you have to kind of look yourself in the mirror and acknowledge that newer competition has gotten better and the presentation of their new listings are better than your old listings, like for the most part. Unless you've had a super clean professional look for a long time, whatever, you got to realize that the newer and the marketplace itself has evolved and has gotten better. The quality of the presentation is enormously better. Technology changes every year. People's camera phones are getting better every year, which means the pictures are getting better every year. If you were using a point and shoot camera that was like so quality 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and you did 500 listings that are still up from a year and a half ago on there with that camera quality, it looks like crap compared to these new listings with an iPhone X, with the portrait mode and all these things you can do. And I don't think that people are understanding that quality boost is huge. Like, a year and a half time is enormous when you're talking e-commerce, you're talking the evolution of technology and presentation. And I just really don't think that we're acknowledging that enough. And the last biggie that I'm going to talk about is consistency. And I'm noticing this definitely on eBay for sure. And this kind of is where I'm blending into some other platforms because I sell on multiple platforms. But I'm noticing this, especially on Poshmark, it's killing me. Like, because I've had so many phases of photos in my business, like if you were to look at my store right now, like I can tell you what 6-month phase I did those items in because the background might have been different or the quality of the photo is a little different or my lighting setup was a little different. And you can just tell. And that's why I'm actually cycling out a lot of my old inventory is I'm noticing the quality difference or just the branding and consistency difference on like a Poshmark closet really hurts my sales, I think, because it's not all consistent across the board. They're not seeing the same background every time. And I think it's just not an enjoyable experience for the consumer, especially like a Poshmark closet type thing, not having that consistency. And And on eBay too, like having the consistency just makes you more credible. It ends up leading to more multiple sales. Like when they click through and they end up at your store, that consistency is just huge. So those are really the biggies I wanted to talk about. And I want to talk about when I went through my quality issue. And when I do these videos, I do them based on two things, right? I do them based around what I'm hearing from viewers, from my audience, from direct messages, like what's trending, what are people concerned about. This has been a big topic the last couple of weeks, I see trending, which surprises me because in Q4, normally no one's complaining about anything because sales are usually the best they've been. And we call like Q5 for apparel. When we hit to Q1 this next year, it's even better. So like, I was surprised, and that's why I did this video. The other reason is that it gave me a good opportunity to share one of the things I went through. So as I scaled, where I really took a hit on eBay was I scaled from like me doing everything to having like 6 photographers doing different size batches every week of stuff with varying backgrounds, honestly varying quality between the photographers and like the attention to detail. And then I was having one VA list all of it, which was great because the titles were consistent, the pricing was consistent, right? Like those things were consistent. But the photos were varied so much from person to person, even giving them desktop procedures, how I wanted it, presentation, everything. Like it still varied. And even with coaching, like it was hard to get it identical. And it really stifled my business where I would realize some quality from some versus others, their stuff would sell through slower than the other person with really good quality. And this is where I really kind of had that aha of like, the quality piece is mattering more and more than it ever has on eBay. Like the quality in the presentation, because I literally had a case study of I have 6 or 7 people doing photographs for me, and there's a substantially different sell-through by photographer. And in general, they're doing the same inventory, like the same brand mixes, the same types of items. There was nothing drastic where I'd be like, well, that's a piece of shit inventory and this one is a hot item. Like, of course it's selling through different. Like this was all the same mix, the same palette broken up against, 5 or 6 photographers, and one having double, sometimes triple the sell through over a 3 or 4 month period is another. And it was just like, wow, like it really hit me that the quality piece is just enormous. And when I took a step back and really put my analytical hat on it, was just like, okay, traffic's still increasing to eBay. There are more sellers in the marketplace than ever before. There are more sellers in the apparel space. There's more information available to these sellers than ever before. Technology has improved and gotten better even from a year or 2 years ago when I have some of these old listings up. Buyers just expect more. They're researching less. And that first initial hit to the eye is selling them or not selling them. And there's a big reason why I didn't bring up price as a factor here. Because I think before you get to price, all these other things have a bigger impact. Now, granted, if you're pricing so far above the market that no one's even considering it, like of course that matters more than the presentation, right? But we could spend a whole video talking about pricing strategy, but in general, if you look at sold listings, you look into like a last 60-day look back. Don't look 6 months ago. Look 60 days, right? I don't sort by highest first. I sort recent. I look through the trending of them, like the range that I'm seeing from low to high, looking at the quality. And then I'm picking out, all right, mine is in this quadrant and I'm pricing in it, right? Like that's some basic pricing strategy. And I can do a different video on pricing and how I approach it. I think it's probably worth it. And now that my VA prices for me, I've talked through kind of both those. But I just don't think that pricing matters as much as these other things. I think if you focus more on the quality, the consistency, the titles, freshening your inventory, making sure that it's always fresh, up to date, and then pricing competitively, adjusting the pricing afterwards, I definitely think is good. But like I think these other things just matter more. And there's an interesting comment here I want to talk about. Is Ron is saying Q4 is never going to be good for used clothing. No one is buying used clothes for presents to friends and family. They buy new. Maybe there are more the collectible used clothing. Yeah, so I would say in general that's directionally true for commodity-based clothing, right? Like I want to buy something for me. I don't think is going to peak as much as it is after Christmas with gift cards and money and things they've gotten. Well, that's why I think January ends up being a heavier month and a better month for used clothing that people are buying for themselves. However, where I do think it peaks is for those of you who do a lot of vintage items, unique items, collectibles, things like that that are hard to get. I think it definitely peaks in fourth quarter as presents. Like, I mean, I bought a apparel item, and two apparel items and one hard good item for a friend of some really vintage stuff that was hard to find. And that's going to be a Christmas gift. I would not have looked any other time of year for it if it wasn't for Christmas and the gift. But I think you're definitely right directionally that, like, and I say commodity, I mean like stuff you're buying for yourself. Like, I just want a different hoodie, I want a different pair of jeans, whatever. Yeah, that's not going to peak till after because it's the extra cash flow. That's the same thing like after tax time, people get tax refunds, definitely peaks there. So yeah, and also for me personally, quarter four is a big deal because I sell mostly new tags. Stuff. So most of my sales are going to be gift stuff. So it does peak a bit more for me than it would for a used clothing seller. I used to be all used clothing. I still have quite a bit up that I'm liquidating off. And I say liquidating, I'm still selling it fairly competitive, but I'm doing auctions and some different things to move it because I'm trying to get to that consistent and standardized. But yeah, that's just my general thoughts. And I do want to recap here for people joining in. Like, eBay from a traffic perspective and from an effort perspective, I think is 100% trending in the right direction. And I don't think they're shrinking. I just think that the marketplace is a lot more competitive than everyone's giving it credit for. Like, you're not giving your competition enough credit, and you're not putting yourself in a position to be competitive enough with them. And I think that that's a big oversight that most of us are making, including myself. Like, I really, really believe that after looking at the themes and really thinking about this topic, I think that's the big point I want to drive home right now is you can't underestimate the other people in the marketplace who might just be doing a better job than you, right? Like, they might be sourcing better. They might be presenting it much better. They might be, their titles might be much better, right? They might be selling a lot more trendy things where you're in middle of the road selling in a saturated category or brand. I think that's the other big thing too is like, adjusting what you're sourcing so you're not in the most competitive spot is a good idea. Like, that's a good idea. So anyways, I feel like that was a big ramble at the end here, but hopefully those are some really good takeaways. You know, really what I want anyone to take away here is like presentation, consistency, and the freshness of your listings is being a big role right now in the eBay marketplace with all the competition that's there. So just really keep that in mind. Be introspective. Take a look in the mirror at your routines. If you don't have a weekly routine where you're freshening old listings, you're changing titles, changing photos, all that, like, you really should consider it. It's worth the effort. Even when you think that, man, spending an hour listing is going to be better for my business, it might not be, honestly. Like, spending that hour repricing other things might be better for you. It's going to help your sell through, help your capital, help keep things moving. That don't avoid that hour. Selena made an interesting point here, and I'll do Q&A now, guys. You can start dropping all the questions you want. I got about 10 minutes to do Q&A, and then I got to wrap up. Said that Poshmark brought new sellers to eBay. I totally agree with you. At Poshmark, Mercari, all these platforms are going to bring new sellers to eBay because what's going to happen is they're going to start searching on these platforms for things. They're going to start, and I think this is why eBay is smart by using the social media marketing. They're going to start cross-branding with these customers that haven't reached eBay yet, but sell the same things on eBay that sell on these other platforms. They're going to start hitting the feeds of these customers, and they're going to start bringing them over. So there's definitely some benefit there and some synergy. But yeah, I think that's a great point. Let's see what else we got. Chris said, I sell a lot of antiques and vintage, hard to get items. I was easily making $1,000 to $1,250 a week. Seems like bottom have given out. I sold absolutely zero yesterday. Have 2,200 items listed. Yeah, and Chris, it's really interesting. Like, just like I kind of talked about, if you're selling a lot of antiques and vintage and hard to get items, you don't have a lot of competition maybe, but those items might be sitting for a long time before you get top dollar for them, and continuing to freshen those older listings, I think, is going to be huge for you. I think that's a business model where freshening listings is a big, big deal. Donna said, I've been selling used clothing all along, Q4, no difference than before. Yeah, I don't think that they're saying it's going to drop, Donna. I think it's just like a lot of sellers who sell new items get a huge lift, like Amazon sellers for sure get a monster lift in quarter four because everyone's buying presents in a big quantity. But when you have used clothing, no one's really buying presents of used clothing. So I think that's a very fair point. What else we got here? Ooh, sorry. Trying to scroll. Speaking of, just had an item sell. So Marco said, do you think it's worth the time cross-posting men's clothing on eBay Poshmark? I think it's always worth getting more eyeballs on something if you have capacity to do it. If you're struggling on one platform, though, I mean, try to fix that platform. I'm on 3 platforms now because if I'm going to take the time to list a piece of inventory and it has a 3, I mean, I can get it in front of 2 additional audiences. That is that much quicker I can turn that over and sell it to different buyers. It's worth it to me. The more, I mean, one thing, and I honestly, like, this isn't an original thought. I've learned this really through watching Chris over on Daily Refinement, chatting with him, chatting with other successful resellers. You get to a point where you only can list so much stuff. And the way that you're growing is by getting it and selling it faster and on more platforms. The biggest sellers sell on so many different platforms. Someone asked, what type of shelving are you using? If you go back, I have a couple of videos, like maybe 3 or 4 videos ago, where I go over how I keep my inventory. I put links to these shelves. These are what I use inside because they're lightweight. I don't get as many bins on them. They're from Walmart. They're like $30 some a piece. They're pretty rigid plastic. They actually work really well. You can fit 10 bins on them. They're five shelves. I use Husqvarna wire rack shelving where I fit 3 across 5 shelf in the garage, and I linked that in that same video. Oh, what else do we have here? Yeah, someone said, yeah, cross posting sucks. Takes forever. I hate it. Yeah, and I mean, it's like, what are you willing to do to keep your sales moving, right? If cross posting is what's going to help, then it's what price you're willing to pay, or is it something maybe you should outsource? Someone said, diversifying is the key right now. New and pre-owned and vintage desirable items first. First impression of your quality of pictures and giving customers options the best to stay competitive in the market. Yeah, I mean, I think diversifying within your niche. I think you have to be very careful not to get into too many niches, but I think that diversifying within your niche is definitely a great idea. Someone said, is it better to list 30 items on eBay or 15 of the same item on multiple platforms? I would say 15 items on 3 different platforms to me would be better than 30 just on eBay now. If we're talking clothing, like you're talking Mercari and Poshmark, just because the additional audiences sells through so much better. Like today, I have 4 Poshmark sales, I have 1 Mercari sale, and I think I've got like 7 or 8, maybe 9 eBay sales now. So it's like, it's just, those are the same items that were all listed on eBay, but now they're listed on 2 other ones. That's 5 additional sales today. So to me, that's just way, way worth it. Let's see. Don said, what 3 sites are you on besides eBay and Posh? Mercari is the 3rd. And I'm actually, so I don't know why it took me this long to start scanning and thinking about it. I get a lot of accessories in my pallets, and a lot of new tag stuff like socks and different things. Aren't necessarily the big brands, like some Field and Stream stuff. Like I got these Cozy Cabin Field and Stream socks that I think I'm going to send a bunch in Amazon FBA. I got, trying to think some of the other stuff. I have these like Sunday hats, a couple different things I've gotten through these pallets that do well on Amazon FBA, and I'm going to start sending a lot of those in. So I will be on 4 platforms soon. Probably the end of this month, I'll send out my first shipment. Someone said, what do you do with damaged items when it comes to claiming taxes as a loss? So I mean, you really well, I'm going to say that for a separate video. That's a complicated question, right? Because it depends if you donate the damaged items, like if they're usable to like homeless or things like that, and you can donate them. That becomes a different category than if you write them off as like your returns and allowance category. That's a little too heavy for this video. It's a great question, but I promise I will address it. You can also direct message me on Instagram, and I'll take that. Someone said eBay was downgraded by Morgan Stanley, stating we underestimated how quickly core marketplaces would deteriorate. That's super interesting, Aaron. And what's interesting with that is you have to also consider what they're evaluating, right? So Morgan Stanley is evaluating the stock price valuation, not necessarily the effectiveness of the platform as a seller. So I think that it's definitely something to consider when you, because that's kind of like a headline read and definitely valid, right? They're talking about the health of the company, the financial health of the company for an investment opportunity, their share in the marketplace, things like that. So it's definitely valid, but its effectiveness in the marketplace as a seller, I don't know that it's diminished. I don't think it's shrunk. I think that the competition has increased, which maybe lends to that what you just said, right? Is we underestimate how quickly core marketplaces deteriorate. It's definitely something to consider. All right, I will take one or two more questions here, and then I'm going to wrap up. I really appreciate everyone staying and tuning in. I think this is an important topic to talk about since a lot of people have been complaining about it recently. And I'm a pretty optimistic person, so, I mean, someone said, how far do you dig into the tie quality? I don't quite understand the question. Are you talking about ties? I don't really sell ties anymore because I don't do used stuff. Yeah, and thank you. If you guys don't mind hitting that like button for me, I would appreciate it. Someone just said, why do you hustle so hard? Appreciate your insights as always, Luke. That's a pretty loaded question, but I don't relax well. I like big goals. I like building things. I like building businesses. And right now I'm in a position where I'm working full time. And so I have to hustle in the hours I'm not to build my business. One day I'm sure I'll get to a point where I'll just be building my businesses only. But I just have some big ambitions. That's a really loaded question, but in general, I just have a lot of big goals. I want a lot of big things for myself, for my family, for my life, and hustling and building businesses is what I enjoy to get there. So that's really the simplest explanation. Let's see. Do you find that people are well-versed in tie quality, silk, and bias cutting? Oh, I have no idea, to be honest with you, from a consumer standpoint there. Someone just said eBay also says at the same time they are doing bigger numbers than ever, maybe more costs for them. Yeah, I mean, they've been padding their bottom line, I think, a bit. I've seen, right? They're running all these discounts and promotions to the customers, right? That's just they're inflating their top line sales, but they're giving all these back end discounts to customers, so it's hitting their bottom line. Like these are games that are played from a public stock perspective. Are you talking investing and things like that? So it's kind of it's hard to tell what they're really doing. I think that to me, the big indicator as a seller is what is the traffic numbers coming to the site, right? By categories that I sell in. What's the competition look like in it? Is the demand still there for what I'm selling in the marketplace? Like I'm not as worried about their bottom line overall from a company because it's not like in my mind, eBay's not going anywhere. It's not like it's going to collapse tomorrow. Like their financial health isn't so bad they're just going to evaporate, right? To me, it's more as a niche seller in my niche, the traffic coming to the site, is it reflective and positive to my business? I think from my business anyways, for New Tags Apparel, it's stronger than ever has. I think the competition is strong, but I think there's great opportunity still. And even with used clothing, there's still great opportunity. You just have to know what you're sourcing. You have to be diligent. You have to be niche specific. You have to be up on the trends, and you have to be able to evolve and give good presentation, consistency, and freshness to your listings. All right, I have to wrap up. My wife is downstairs patiently with the dog, and we take our shifts with the puppy. The puppy we have. So it is my turn. I appreciate everyone tuning in. If you don't mind, hit that like button for me on the way out. If you have questions, disagreements, I love hearing from you in the comments. I'm all about debating and having different varying levels of opinion. I never take offense to it. So if you have difference of views, please put it down below. I don't mind at all. I just have seen this topic trending a ton lately. And I just thought it was important to address since I've been on the platform for so long. It's a big piece of my business. I put out a lot of content around it. I felt like it was decent to address tonight. So have a great night, guys. I hope hopefully everyone's having a great midweek. We're getting close to the holidays. Make sure you take time to stop and reflect, enjoy time with your family, enjoy what you're doing with your business, and really think about what you want to do for next year. I will have a video up soon with goals for 2019, as that's one of my favorite things to do is goal set. So have a great night, guys. Thank you so much for stopping in. Take care.